talking for a second.
Hey, Tommy. Tommy, you there?
Yeah, Tommy's over there taking a nap while we figure all this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Ev, do you want to start with what ETA is, and then Tommy, and then me?
Yeah. All right. So ETA, we're a small company making headphones, and we all started off as hobbyists. And we use a lot of additive manufacturing techniques. And our general philosophy is just to try a whole bunch of different stuff, everything we can, until we settle in on what we think is the best sound that you can get at whatever price we have to offer those things to based on the parts we have. And yeah, my name is Ev, and I'm in charge of the sound. That's the TLDR of it.
Tommy, can you is your microphone active? All right. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard him only in the beginning. Well, I'm not Tommy, I'm Tom. I like to solve a lot of our problems and deal with issues that don't involve design most of the time. That way, Ev and Tommy have way more time to work on designs, iterate. There's a lot of iteration, like almost too much sometimes. And it's like, dang, man, I thought we were done. But it's like, nope,
Yeah.
one more thing. And we just keep going. We just keep going. And I think it's really cool how much work uh, we put in every design. It's kind of insane sometimes because we have an idea and we're like, okay, this is fun. And if there's promise, it usually becomes a thing. And as you've seen us, we've made a few products recently, and we just came out with their newest one, the On Ear. And if Tev or Ami, or if ever Tommy wanted to comment a little bit about some of that design aspect, that'd be cool. I see you,
Yeah.
Ev. Why an On Ear?
Uh, the reason why the O2, which is the new headphone, is an on-ear, the short version is because we tried a bunch of different stuff, and I think it sounds really good. When you have a driver really close to your ear, then a lot of the factors of like HRTF, when you put the driver far away, kind of becomes like slightly less obvious to the listener because you're not bypassing your entire ear's anatomy when it's on the ear. You're still kind of like getting some of that outer ear anatomy on like an inner monitor. But unlike having a driver really, really far away from your ear where there's all sorts of like reflections and phasing things that your ear kind of has to like mesh with, since it's right there, it just kind of sounds a bit more like it's meant to sound during tuning, you know?
Yeah, I read a little bit of your blog posts of why, but why though? You know, why not a big cavity and a giant pad, and the driver is like 2.5 inches away from your ear? Like, what is actually wrong with that? Sometimes.
Well, for me, a big part of why, or at least my theory as to why I enjoy the sound a bit more is because the proportion of direct versus reflected sound is a lot higher on an on-ear because there's nothing to interact with the energy the driver is putting out because it's right against your ear. Unlike if you put it really far away, you know, the sound may disperse with a certain pattern as it comes off the front face of the driver. They can bounce around inside of a large shell or a large ear pad, and then when it meets your ear, you know, it can lose a lot of clarity because of those reflections. It becomes a much more complicated design challenge the further you put the driver away. So when you put it right against your ear, it just sounds clearer, smoother, more consistent.
Yeah, I see that. I've tried the HD 800 and some planars, and so when it sounds like it's behind my ear, it's just that's for me that's a sound I don't personally enjoy. I can see a lot of people loving that sound. It sounds bigger. It sounds like you're in this bigger room, but it just I don't know. I feel it's not for me. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really what it is. You're trying to remove the room a little bit in a way, but I know you changed the housing for this model as opposed to the original open ETA headphone. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the O2 has an oval baffle instead of a circle. And the reason that is so that when you put the foam earpads on, it stretches in such a way that it hides the protruding part of the driver's grill. So when you put it on your head, your ear shouldn't really touch anything except for foam, which is obviously much more comfortable than it touching hard metal. And the other thing is, I think it's just a little bit more ergonomic. Most people's ears are a somewhat more oval shape as opposed to a circular shape. So when you put it on your head, it feels different than some other on ears because it's kind of like cradling your ear a little bit, but it's also like surrounding it as much as it's on top of it. So it alleviates a little bit of pressure and it distributes it more evenly across the ear. So it feels a little lighter.
Yeah, I'm sure it changes the surface area too, and
Yeah.
have a
But
little bit of that baffle step going on.
yeah, and the other thing about on ears that I think is important to recognize is that whatever driver you're using in any headphone design, it has a certain amount of displacement of air and excursion when it produces volume. And depending on the size of the room or cavity that it's pressurizing, it can do low frequencies specifically more or less easily, depending on those things. So as an analogy, if you put an 8-inch woofer into a sedan, you can rattle your windows and have bass down to 5 hertz or whatever. But if you put an 8-inch woofer into an arena or a large living room, then suddenly it's not enough to have a sense of dynamic swing that fills the room. So with an on-ear headphone, the driver to ear space ratio is obviously skewed that the driver is effectively much larger than it would be in a design where it's farther away.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But a lot of people don't like on
Okay.
ears. So why'd you decide to actually make an on ear if you know people immediately want to say no?
Um, I don't know. I think it's cool to fulfill a niche. I think it's cool to experiment and try things that other companies might not want to try. And I think in doing those things, if we land somewhere sonically that makes sense and is really enjoyable and unique compared to a lot of other things we've tried, then I think it's worth sharing that with people. So that's really what it comes down to.
Hey, Tommy, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, guys. I had to I had to change to my phone from my laptop to make this
Mm.
work.
Introduce yourself.
All right, starting again. I'm Tommy from ETA. I'm the T from ETA. I am mainly responsible for project management and product design. So I do all the CAD work and um, designs that Ev comes up with.
Yeah.
What else did I miss?
Uh,
That's
we started
kind
talking
of,
about
yeah.
O2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to ask how many iterations and actual set and changes or major changes happened during the development of O2?
It's really hard to say. We have so many iterations in the CAD vault that, yeah,
I mean,
I would have to manually count the
yeah,
number of iterations.
with on-ear headphones like the original Mini Open and the O2, I would say there's usually fewer iterations for those models than the other models in terms of the geometry of the enclosures. But then there are more iterations in the tuning and the damping that's applied to the driver, because those things become much more obvious and critical to the sound that you get. So, but I would still estimate our iterations are probably in the hundreds for the O2. And it's also hard to say because we started from other models that were already in our library and started changing them from there. So it goes way back. It's not just like we sat down one day and started from scratch.
Nice. I believe Smod had a question for us.
Yeah, so I'd say a lot of our headphones in the past have tended to be like fairly strong on bass, maybe not like, like bass head moving bass, but I always pay attention a lot to the low end. And I've also usually prioritized having really silky smooth highs, even if the highs are slightly dark. But I think O2 is a little bit of a different sound that I took some feedback in mind from people who are listening to our other headphones. So I tuned it to be a little bit airier, a little bit more forward, a little bit tighter on transients. So compared to our other headphones, it might not be the kind of headphone that you want to crank up to 100 dB. But I think at lower listening levels and moderate listening levels, it's a little bit more about the nuances and the details kind of coming forward, as opposed to just being really like mellow and chill like some of our other headphones have been. So yeah, I'd say I was going for, I guess, what you could consider a fairly balanced or neutral tonality. The bass isn't really lifted, it's kind of in line. The highs aren't really sloped, they're also kind of in line. It's just meant to be kind of flat. That's a complex question, so I'll do my best to address it. And I mean, maybe my teammates here can chime in based on experiences they've had with other headphones. But to my thinking, I think having a large chamber in the front side of a headphone, it may create the illusion of a larger soundstage. But since that soundstage exists within the headphone itself, it's hard to say if it's actually more true to the recording or if it's just kind of creating that sense, which maybe it does. Maybe that's pleasing, regardless of whether or not it's quote unquote true to the recording. Maybe that's desirable. But I think oftentimes when you get a bigger soundstage, then suddenly some recordings won't jive with that soundstage and they might sound kind of dissonant or difficult to engage with. So when making an on-ear headphone, you can pretty much accept that the soundstage is going to be a little bit less deep. Things aren't going to sound like they're coming from quite as far away. But at the same time, I think that different recordings, the kind of nuances of the space that is different between those recordings might come through a little bit more clearly without seeming like it's contraindicating with the headphones design. So it's kind of like give and take, as opposed to it being polarizing depending on the recordings. Sometimes very grand and amazing sounding and huge, and sometimes very, small or dissonant. It kind of just brings things more to the center, which, is a sound I like. And also because it's a very open design, there's probably some inherent crossfeed between channels simply due to the bleed of the sound around you. So I don't know. I do pay attention to imaging, continuity, and the localization of things, but I'm not always trying to create this cavernous, deep, hollow sound. So that's. Yeah, and I mean, there are still ways that you can tailor the sound staging and imaging even with an on-ear headphone, because on the back of the driver, there's a bunch of vent holes. And depending on the damping you apply to which hole and the positioning of that hole relative to the geometry of your ear, that can actually like change the focus of the soundstage. For example, if you have a lot more damping on the front edge of the driver close to the concha of your ear, you might still have like a tighter transient response and a little bit more clarity in the middle of the soundstage compared to if you had an open vent hole there, where it might sound much more booming, much more soft, much more bassy in the center of the image, and then you would push the treble out to the sides. So it kind of feels like mixing a stereo image, even though you're not starting with a baseline of having a really cavernous sound. You can still kind of make some narrow stroke adjustments even when it's right there against your ear. I think it comes down to personal preference a lot. For me, the softness or stiffness of the foam against my ear and the shape of that foam relative to the shape of my ear, and then also the amount of clamp from the headband can all be ways to adjust the comfort, even though it still is an on-ear fit. So I wouldn't say, oh, we just don't care about comfort, because we put a lot of effort into making sure that for being an on-ear, it's as comfortable as it could be. But
Yeah,
for people,
and
yeah, go ahead,
all
Tom.
right, and then just to add on from what Ev has mentioned regarding on ears. Yeah, I'm one of those people that generally find on ears uncomfortable for my ears, but we've made a couple tweaks to the design so that it's more comfortable to our customers. So like one of the things is we angled the driver housing slightly so that it aligns with the shape of the ear. And then we also, another change we did was we made the front baffle um, oval instead of circular, like you typically see in on ears. So
And we're working on some other ear pads that are a little bit more soft, kind of plusher foam as well. The stock pads right now are pretty firm. I stretch them out, but they still prevent your ear from touching the grills for the most part if you wear them in the right position. But yeah, we're still working on it. But as far as on ears go, I'm pretty confident that it's one of the more comfortable ones available. I would
I would,
say, yeah, go
oh,
ahead,
go
Tom.
ahead.
Or it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
so I would say the sound of the ETA headphones have been um, evolving over time. A lot of people consider our first headphone, Genesis Graphene, as a specialist headphone because we tuned it more on the downslope side in terms of frequency response. Whereas on the later models like the Mini C, Mini S, and the O2, they're more of a generalist where um, most people will enjoy it regardless of genres. We, as a team, when we develop the headphones, we try with all different types of genres before, you know, showcasing it to other people. And yeah, I think I think O2 will be something that anyone can listen to, any genre, and just enjoy for what it is.
Yeah.
I'm told 70s music from one customer and another one really likes Rush on it. So, I mean, those seem like totally different genres to me.
I do. I listen to a lot of breakcore music, which is often mixed in a very like hot, harsh, up tilted way, and also some hyper pop, and also just 90s and 2000s hip hop as well. I listen to a lot of that stuff. And since I'm in charge of tuning, that that's probably a large portion of my listening when I'm, like in the tuning process, thinking about how the headphones are going to sound. But I always do my other checks too, and then get feedback from other people who listen to different things than I do to be sure that we're covering all bases. But yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
so I
it's
would say, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it'd be cool if anyone was able to share their opinion on it, and if they wanted to hear it. I mean, you're more than welcome. There's no exclusion on anyone. I think there is gonna be a few loaners coming out. We're just waiting on a few parts, and we'll be able to send most of those out.
Yeah, I would say it's really based on the amount of interest. Yes, we do have a couple loaners already made that are sent out uh, for Super Best Audio Friends forum and a couple reviewers on YouTube. But it's like also on the back end, we're also limited on the number of quantities we can allocate for loaners because we still have to sell and we still have to make enough for our customers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make it clear that all of our headphones are literally made to order. Like we don't have a warehouse full of headphones ready to ship. Like when someone places an order, I get notified and I personally will print the shells and assemble it and pack it up and ship it out. Um, so yeah, loaners are like definitely a labor of love and something we're interested in. But in the past, balancing that out with the amount of parts that we have, because we're normally ordering parts in smaller batches, has been tough. But thankfully, our next batch of parts is substantially larger than any other batch we've had. So we'll definitely be getting the ball rolling on more sets.
I think there's interest, and if they do review, that's up to them. We generally don't advise at all or try to influence any reviewer if they want to produce content featuring our products, but they're more than welcome to, and obviously we appreciate it, and we will share it if we can, through our channels. And we definitely like people having their own opinions, and it's not influenced by us at all. But as for people that are certified that you're going to see a video of our product, we can't say it right now. We don't want to spoil the fun of who releases, their impressions first, and there's just no real like tiered system. It's just if you're interested and you want to hear it and you want to talk about it, talk to us, and we'll probably share our product with you.
Yeah. Yeah. We've definitely reached out to a lot of folks, and we're hoping some of that comes together. We just don't have any concrete timelines. And also, um, our fans and supporters, we have our own Discord community, and we're well known in some online spaces. And people who like us tend to really like us. So anybody who's heard our headphones really likes what we have to offer. Like, I hope that those people will also encourage different YouTubers to talk about our products as well, because I think just us being like, oh, we're some randos making headphones, we want you to check them out even though you're a famous YouTuber, that's not as convincing as dozens, hundreds of people saying, hey, I already have this headphone, I love it, I love your take. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, there's like a slight conflict. It's like, well, I do want to reach out to these people, right? But what does it mean if we join their Patreon chat? Are we trying to influence them monetarily? For views? Like we can't. I think we can't do that, so we haven't done that. But I mean, that's definitely a way to get their attention, probably immediately. But I think that's not the direction we want to go in, and that's not something we've ever done or will.
Yeah, in general, I'd say, like, in terms of the operation of the business, we've really put a lot of emphasis on things growing really organically. um just sending out headphones, seeing what people have to say, and then a lot of our success has been word of mouth. I'm not saying that's the only way to be successful for us, but it's been working pretty well, and we've been growing pretty nicely, and things are generally in an upward trend. So, yeah. I want to hear Tommy on this one.
Man, we are constantly developing and researching into new products. We have probably like 3 to 5 up and coming models we have been developing parallel with the current production models that we've been working on. I would say our priorities this year is to scale the business in terms of manufacturing side, and I guess like public perception of how audience and community members see our products. So currently, when you guys look at the mini series and the O2, you guys see them with the OEM headband, Sony, that's from Sony, and that's definitely not the most luxurious looking headband. So we've been developing and trying to work with manufacturers that could help us customize headbands and cables just to make our products look as nice as they sound, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
I'd say, yeah, a big part of 2023's development is basically working on the brand identity and the aesthetics of what we already have. Um, but in terms of like the more sonic product development side, I'll just say we have about 40 different sample drivers that we've tested in the last year or so that are all different in various ways. Some of which the technology or materials haven't ever been seen on the market. So we're definitely like investing a lot on that side as well. We're always like looking towards the new best thing, and also playing with different iterations of shells and closures to see, what kind of new sounds that we can find and balance the acoustic problems that are faced with this or that design. So we're kind of working on all fronts.
Yeah, and then if you guys ever look at our meet photos, you would sometimes see strange looking prototypes that I'm like holding on and like having people try. So those are like subtle hints that we give to our community that, that we're always working on something. We just can't talk about it much yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a history in the past, especially when we first started. I would post all the time about different R&D updates, iterations for the public eye. And it was really fun to have those conversations. But as time went along, sometimes I'd be really excited about one iteration that would be really great at this one particular sonic quality, but then over time I would realize that it was deficient in another, and then we would go back to the drawing board. And people would get attached to certain iterations, even if they weren't going to work as like a viable product. So we kind of decided to be a little bit more private about our research and development until things were like closer to launch time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one headphone people have been wanting for a long time, but it's not ready.
Yeah. Some of that's probably my fault too, because I am completely obsessive about this and that, and I really don't settle when it comes to the sonics of the product. And if there's something that's even a little bit off, I'll say no, we'll go back and adjust it again. And sometimes the like one more tweak becomes another 100 tweaks, another 1,000 tweaks.
Yeah, over
So
a few months.
yeah, one of our headphones that we just iterated last week has been in development since the beginning of 2021. So yeah, sometimes it takes a while.
One of the benefits of ETA is actually how small we are. So, an example would be if we were a large company, how many driver iterations could we go through? Probably 2, 3 would be pushing it, because for every driver sample, most major companies would probably order over 1,000. So it's either we have 1,000 stock of drivers that we know are compromised and we try to, sell them, but we don't do that, obviously, right? So we have the freedom and the flexibility to iterate because we're so small, and we're not ordering 1,000, and being locked into a certain like product or part. So I think that's one of the best things about ETA actually, is
Yeah.
how small we are. And once we figure out, oh, this is it. Like after months and years, like we've done, you can finally like be like, okay, finally, this is the one. So that's why it takes so long sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, if you look on the market from much larger companies, and I'm not trying to like put down any particular approach to R&D, but there are a lot of headphones out there that look very similar to each other in terms of the way the driver is implemented, the types of earpads that are used, the general chassis shape and the design. But every time we make something, we really want it to feel completely unique and itself among our lineup. So I think we're much more radical. We're much more willing to take risks in R&D with knowledge that like, during R&D, we're only working with one particular set of parts, whether that's like a unique set of drivers or unique shells that we were able to 3D print a certain way before we lock into producing thousands at a time, like Tom was saying.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the implementation first. Like if you look at, our history of headphones, and you'll see this in our community, people get excited. They're like, oh man, I want to know what the first ETA headphone was like. I want to hear a Gen G. And then people buy a Gen G and they hear it and they're like, oh man, I love these things about it. And then they think about how it relates to our current models like a Mini S or into an O2. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but they don't sound similar, and they're definitely different in almost every way they can be sonically. So whether that's like a maturity in sound or a different implementation in all of them and different techniques, I think me as someone who's been seeing the progress of ETA, I think it's really cool.
Yeah. I always like to point out when we're talking about this how if you look at the loudspeaker market, especially DIY loudspeaker markets, you can find, hundreds or thousands of different designs that are all using the same tweeters, the same woofers, whatever. but based on how the cabinet is designed, how the crossover is designed, how it's implemented, how it's stamped, what room it's in, etc. There's so many variables. The same driver can sound an infinite number of ways. You just have to kind of like iterate enough and try enough things to kind of unlock different sonic qualities that whatever the driver is kind of capable of. So yeah. Tommy, you want to chime in on this at all?
No, I feel like you guys covered it really well, but I do want to add one more thing. Yeah, about being small. Yeah, we are a small company, but what makes us unique is that we're a community base. What I mean by that is um, in the macroscopic way, the way ETA was created was, community members coming together that wanted to make something cool for the community. But also, because we are a small company, just with 3 or 4 members in the team, we do get a lot of help from the community as well. Tom, for example, he wasn't part of the original 3 members, but he volunteered to help us out with the website and other procurement activities. Scared, aka Gan, I see him in the audience. He's been helping us with the headband designs. Um, so many other members like Leander that helped us with the ETA logo. So we really are kind of like a grassroots movement type. We really started from the bottom. Um, we are from the community. We're trying to help support the community by creating innovative products and like test things that no other companies will.
Yeah. I was going to say, speaking more to what Tommy was saying about us being a community-oriented company, like for the first, like we started in 2020. It's 2023 now. We became an official company only in 2022. But, as is right now, pretty much all of the sales that we generate has been pooled back into the business for either more R&D or to order more parts or just do things to like keep the business afloat. So, we're not just like collecting tons of payments from every sale and all getting rich off of this. Like, I think I'm the only one who's been paid a little bit from ETA, and everybody else is more or less volunteering their time. So we're definitely, our main goal is just providing the best products we can and offering them at good prices, and then just keeping things going and growing and accepting support wherever we can. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome, and as ETA, I think we're going for our own sound. I don't think we're trying to do what someone else is doing. I think we're just doing what we want to do, and I think that really shows, especially with O2, because I mean, what other company wants to make an on-ear headphone?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said before, we're really willing to take risks in the designs of our products. And of course, we have like certain sonic or comfort or utility goals in mind to service the community. But, like we like making weird stuff, and I hope that shows. And, maybe for that reason, some of our headphones might be polarizing with some folks, but regardless of that, you can always trust that there will in the future be another ETA headphone that's totally different than the ones of the past. So it's always evolving. So yeah, if you're not convinced now, just check in next year or the year after, and things will be different.
There's a possibility, but it's really far from now. Like, if
Yeah.
you're waiting for that, you might be waiting a while. We really like our dynamics, and we really like working, on these drivers and the R&D behind it, and we have a lot into it. But for a planar driver, pretty unlikely this year. It could happen. It could happen, but I don't think so. Not this year.
Yeah, and I just want to say that even within the realm of electrodynamic drivers, there's still a lot of untapped potential. There are different types of magnets that haven't ever been used before in a consumer headphone product. There are different types of voice coils, different diaphragms, different damping materials, different chassis materials. Like, even though there's a lot of electrodynamic headphones on the market, I would say in terms of the boundaries of the technology, we've barely scratched the surface. So there's still a lot of room to grow even within electrodynamic headphones. Yeah, so the diaphragm is the same. Or I guess all of the headphones that have come to market from ETA, Gen G, Mini, Supra, Mini C, Mini S, and now O2, they've all been using copper-clad aluminum voice coils and a graphene composite diaphragm with a flexing suspension. Over time, we've changed a few things. We've changed the impedance from 300 ohms like we had on Gen G in the original Mini Open to 32 ohms. And we also changed the driver chassis material from plastic to anodized aluminum. But yeah, in terms of products we've sold, we've been sticking with this driver for a while, and I'm really confident about its performance. And the 32 ohm ones are really lively and easy to drive. And they also transform a lot depending on the damping and the chassis. But like I said earlier, we've tried about 40 or 50 different other drivers, just changing this and that variable. And a lot of the times, changing these things either does or doesn't work out. But in the future, we definitely have big plans to use some different stuff. And we might even do a limited launch in the future, just using some of the more esoteric samples that we collected over R&D. So
Yeah, there's some weird ones in there.
yeah.
You want to tease any of them?
Yeah, I guess so. But some of the things we've been playing with, we've been using some Alnico magnets in some of our samples. A lot of headphones, in fact, pretty much every headphone made after the mid 80s has used neodymium magnets. But of course, Alnico magnets are used in a lot of vintage woofers and tweeters, and also a lot of guitar pickups use Alnico magnets because people think there's some unique properties about how the magnet interacts with the coil in the magnetic field. So yeah, we'll have some of the world's first, at least in the 21st century, Alnico magnet headphone drivers that'll probably do some rounds in the future. And we've also done some silver-plated voice coils as well. A lot of the time, voice coils are either aluminum or copper, but we've done some silver-plated coils as well that really have some unique sonic properties that I'm excited to explore a bit more.
So
Yeah.
I would say, um, just wanted to clear up something. So, we do say that all our drivers are 32 ohms, easy to drive, but that doesn't mean that when you plug it into a different source, you can't tell a difference or you won't hear the technicalities that you would expect from a really good headphone. I would say 32 ohm drivers were chosen so that the user can, enjoy our headphones, whether it's straight off of a laptop, phone, or if you have a full-size setup using like crazy multi-thousand kilobuck dacs and, esoteric tube amps. Um, Personally, when most of my time I do use all ETA stuff, straight off of a laptop or a phone because it's just really convenient. I don't have to like turn on all my complicated setups. I can just use it to listen to music when I work. But sometimes, like on weekends mostly, I go upstairs and then I, I like to listen to the O2 on my my tube DAC plus tube amp. That's like all modded. So yeah, the choice is yours, really.
Yeah, for me, my experience, it changes a lot depending on the source and the amp. Um, I tried it on, what is it, the Bryston? Who's that Canadian amp maker? Anyone know?
Bryson sounds right.
Yeah, the Bryston headphone amp. That sounded pretty good with the Solaris Crane song. I love that. I've heard it on the Amp and Sound Kenzie 1 with the Yigi, and both their attributes were easily passed through. Totally different sound from a dongle, from a Piety, from the Bryson. But my favorite was this DIY amp called the Get Set Go. Wow, that like it's a output transformer coupled tube amp with 6 A3s, not to be confused with 2 A3s, and that was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think that was paired with the I forget the amp maker, but it's quite popular here. It doesn't really matter, but the amp it just came through. Solid state's good. Tube amps are good. And, you know, if you want to hear your gear, you can definitely hear your gear. But it's your preference.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say whether you have a warm and euphonic setup or or a linear, very straight sounding setup, I think the O2 is tuned in a way to accommodate for all types.
Yeah. I can speak to this a little bit. I think that in the past, because ETA has a different approach to design and damping, and our headphones have a unique sound, sometimes it takes a while for people who use our headphones to figure out the best synergy to bring the most out of them. Because, the same way that if you use a lot of orthos and you try to use them on an amplifier that's optimized for high impedance dynamics, it might not sound amazing. Sometimes unique synergies come up that you might not expect. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth experimenting with stuff. In my own experience, even though I am very interested in finding out the maximum possible for performance you can get from our headphones with a lot of fancy gear, I'm also very much interested in the idea that something can scale down with grace and not punish you if you want to use consumer, basic equipment. So, yeah, I mean, I tune with bottom of the barrel, just laptop, cell phone users in mind, because I think if it sounds good on those devices, then it can only get better when you go up.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it, and it kind of put me in like a frenzy. It's like, man, I need to get a different source. Like, you just hear all the things wrong with my Mo2 M2, and it's like, man, do I want to get a Yigi? Like, do I want to get a expensive dongle? You know, so I'm
Yeah.
definitely scaling up after after the O2 because it cares about it. Not in the sense that it punishes you and you don't hear the noise in your system really like some other headphones that I've tried, but I I just can't get enough of it personally.
Yeah. I would say in tuning as well, like I'm always trying to engage the more emotional, like music minded part of the brain that engages with music. I'm not always like concerned with like finding the most like prickly technicalities, overshot transients, this and that, but I really want to make an addictive sound or a sound that like ignites passion for music and also for, listening to music, enjoying headphones, enjoying whatever equipment you have. I just want to make headphones that are really, really fun to listen to. So I think we got that. But one of the most surprising things for me in terms of scaling, which is something I didn't even really used to believe in. I used to make jokes about it because I thought it was so silly, but cables that you use with the O2 can really make a significant difference. And I'm not even going to say that, it's directly correlated to like, going out and buying an $8,000 headphone cable because, the price and the sound, might not always mean optimal synergy, but I think cables matter a lot. And it's been really cool to explore that when I thought it was like something that was complete nonsense before.
Yeah, I would say the O2 kind of made us realize how important every component in the chain plays a part to the sound. Not just the transducer, like the headphones, but also, like I've mentioned, cables, amps, dacs, etc.
Yeah, I heard it on a ZDS. I think that's the OTL eddy current amp, and I thought it was pretty
Hmm.
good. And that's like 120 ohm output. And the person I was with was really perplexed because it was a 32 ohm driver, and he was like, he's like, that this doesn't make sense. That shouldn't work. Like, but it did. It didn't. It performs. It's a very high performance driver, and the load and the impedance and the impedant reflections. We do a lot to get a good driver. It's not just a cheap thing we're getting on Parts Express or something, but we we develop it.
I would say one thing, I'm not sure if it was covered when I was having mic issues, but a lot of people might be hesitant about the O2 when they see that it's an on-ear design, because you know what we normally associate on-ears with are um, more on the affordable mid-fi kind of sound, more not really typically what you associate with, um, I guess, high fidelity. But I would say, like, going back to what we talked about, being implementation first company, I think we created something that's very different to what most people associate on-ears with. And I would say, give it a chance. You never know what you'll hear.
Oh, I know what I'll hear.
Yeah. So I can speak to this. Some of the first pairs that were shipped, basically had a few different stock grill options. And after we got some feedback from the first owners about the specific thing where they were saying, oh, the grill, seems to give me fatigue, or it seems to like create some glare. We actually changed the grill design after that point and made it more than twice as open and a little bit shallower as well to mitigate a lot of those issues where, at least for me, and in terms of the frequency response and spectral decay distortion measurements that I'm able to take, at this point, I can detect zero difference between the grill on and off, which I'm not saying that, anybody's hallucinating if they can still hear a difference. Obviously, like your ears don't lie to you, but I would say it's something that we definitely had in mind. We addressed it, and then all of the updated grills, I sent them for free for all of the pairs that are already out there. So I consider that to be an issue that's been put to rest.
And that's something we can do because, our scale.
Yeah.
Right. If those 10,000 headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though the core frame of the driver is the same between models, the venting on the back of the driver uses different damping materials that are laid out in different ways. So if someone decided to DIY upgrade their headphone between ETA models, they would find it a rather laborious process to remove all those damping materials and apply each one to the frame one at a time. And that's also a risky endeavor too, because you're dealing with open holes on the back of the driver. A single stray particle or one of the dampers not being properly aligned can cause channel imbalances, driver failures, rattles, etc. So it's kind of a liability to have people be swapping between models. I prefer to do that in-house, but of course, if you get an ETA headphone and decide early on that you wanted a different one, then you can just send it back, and normally we can do exchanges without having to run a lot of money on either end. So we try to take care of people in that way.
Yeah, I would say it, in the earlier days of ETA, we definitely had a more of a different approach, with customers, allowing customers to tweak and modify the headphones that they purchase, especially like the Genesis, we used to have. But like I've mentioned, it's a liability thing, and because the driver damping in the rear is so sensitive to channel imbalance and other issues that could happen if someone that doesn't know what they're doing tries to do it without proper instruction. It's just gonna cause pain on both sides, both customer and our side. So I think it's just better for us to handle it. And if like I've said, we always take care of our customers. So even if you're not the original owner, you can always talk to us and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, do we have any audience questions? We have two audience members. Do any of you have a question? You can raise your hand or come up here.
So I would say going back to the loaner question, um, if if members of the Sonic Visions Discord want to have an O2 loaner tour, um, if Smod, if you want to organize something, ask members if there's enough members that want to hear, we'll organize something, we'll create a pair for you guys, and then send it around the country.
Countries.
Yep, the world.
Yeah. We
Oh
know
yeah,
if the top of our headband is leather.
it's not. It's polyurethane.
Oh, there you go. Smart.
Yeah, the every headphone in production right now, the O2, the Mini C, and Mini S, in their stock form, they're all animal free.
Yeah, I think you had the original Mini open on there,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
oh yes. So Famish actually has the O2 loaner for the Taco crew currently. Yeah. So we can certainly do that, but if you could help us kind of meet us halfway and then try to gather members that would be interested. Yeah. Mhm.
So
Sounds good.
for loaners, starting a loaner after a different loaner, like a handoff loaner, usually takes a long time. So generally, it's better to split the loaners up to speed it up. That way, people aren't waiting 3 months. Yeah.
Also, related to loaners, like I'm also totally open to selling a loaner unit for a discount while it's touring, and then picking up the loaner with a fresh set to continue. So anybody who loves it while they have it, they can just buy that unit they've already heard for a discount. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to hear one too, Smart, we can send you one. I mean, yeah, but we
We're
could ship to Canada.
yeah, we're bi-coastal right now. Yeah.
There's Canadian members.
Yeah. I also wanted to say, unrelated to loaners, but just to customers, like about a third of our customers in 2022 were overseas from the United States.
Oh yeah,
Since
easily.
we don't have any distributors and we ship everything direct, we're very willing to sell to people in other countries and like just we have a flat rate international shipping fee, but I've shipped like to every corner of the globe, and if
Yeah.
someone's international, I hope they're not thinking that we can't work with them. So
30, 40 countries. I lost count, but it's quite a few all over
yeah,
the place. Europe, you know, Southeast Asia,
yeah,
you know, all over.
it's a
3.5 millimeter.
yeah. So anybody who's got a 3.5 cable for Focals or Hi-Fi Man headphones can use it on the O2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Smart. Thank you for having us
Yeah,
again.
thank you. See you.
All right.
Bye bye.